Hello, I'm football commentator Derek Ray, and you're listening to the FUT Weekly Podcast.
Hello, and welcome to week 23 of the FUT Weekly Podcast. It is the main feed gameplay episode, week 23, which is really getting into the cycle. We're quite deep now, almost halfway. And it's been Fantasy FC's been interesting. If you want to hear more about that on the content episode this week, the supporter episode. But on this one, we are going deep into gameplay, and I don't have Josh Excels, he's away, but instead I have a very able deputy in the form of NealGuides. I've really been bringing out the big guns. We had Nate on the supporter episode this week. But yeah, Neil, great to have you on. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me on this podcast. Really enjoy doing these.
Yeah, let's get into it, because actually, we've had some interesting, and I think we'll probably start with this. Actually, we've had some interesting, communication from EA over the last week about the PlayStyle stat balance. We talked in a previous week about how they were looking into this because they posted a poll to ask in their Discord. That was kind of asking how much impact do you think playstyles have, almost, not whether we should change that. And I think 80% said that playstyles have a big impact on the game, much bigger than stats. And so they've come out recently with a Twitter thread, and what they said in the tweet that's relevant to this was, a major theme in your feedback has been that attributes should feel more powerful and impactful, with playstyles enhancing players rather than defining their entire effectiveness. In an upcoming update, we'll be tuning attributes in several playstyles to better reflect that philosophy. The following playstyles will receive changes: Tiki-Taka, Incisive Pass, Inventive Pass. We will also be bringing some overall changes to power shots and chip shots. I was going to say something, but I'll get to that in a second. Our goal is to bring more weight and value back to core attributes while ensuring playstyles remain meaningful differentiators at the highest levels of play. We're looking forward to sharing the full details in the pitch notes coming soon. As always, your feedback directly shapes these updates, so keep it coming. It's interesting because the way that they've sort of framed this, saying Tiki-Taka, Incisive Pass, Inventive Pass, but then we will also be bringing some overall changes to power shots and chip shots. I'm guessing the changes are slightly different, and that's why they've separated them. I guess just to start with, straightforwardly, the two in that selection of 5 playstyles that stand out, I think, are Tiki-Taka and Incisive Pass. Are you imagining, Neil, that those would be the ones that might get the kind of nerf to make them less effective because they're so vital, basically, to playing short passes and through balls?
I think, but we all know Incisive Pass, Tiki-Taka are probably the most used passing playstyles. Incisive as a cam, for me, my cams, I need Incisive. It's almost like I have to have Incisive. But it's interesting to see how they go about it. Maybe they just, they're going to nerf both of them. Maybe they just reduce the bottom line, or maybe they make it like anyone can do the pass, so you don't need the Incisive playstyle. Maybe perhaps a few animation changes or something. I don't actually know, but it would be interesting. What I would like to see is to do a regular through ball. In theory, everyone gets Incisive Pass, in theory, and then maybe there's a few added benefits on top, as opposed to it being I need Incisive to make a through ball, and if my cam or my centre mid hasn't got Incisive Pass, I can't make a through ball that the player should do with 99 rated stats. So it looks like, they're probably going to nerf both of them. Maybe they might adjust to speed the Tiki-Taka, the velocity at which the pass is being made. That's what I'm probably thinking they're probably going to do. And then with Incisive Pass, I'm not too sure. Probably something to do with the accuracy, maybe the radius of the passes. I'm not really too sure, to be honest. But something along those lines, I would say. What do you think?
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah, it's interesting. I think you're probably right that, they're going to make changes and make worse Tiki-Taka and Incisive Pass. What's interesting is they also said we'll be tuning attributes and several playstyles. So I wonder whether it's kind of like they're trying to balance these two things. I'm guessing they're going to fill the void. So they're not going to make short passing worse, I guess. They're going to tune the attributes to make those more important relative to Tiki-Taka, right? So I think some people were saying this I'm not going to be able to pass it anymore because they're just going to nerf Tiki-Taka. But I think actually what they're saying is the attributes will get stronger in relative terms so that players still have the same level of short passing ability, but if they have the playstyle, right? But players who don't have it are going to be better in relative terms. So it shouldn't mean that you're playing, like, we'll have to see obviously how it pans out, but it shouldn't mean that, you know, passing with a player will necessarily feel hugely different who's really good at passing and has tiki-taka. But the players that don't have tiki-taka will be closer in terms of their passing ability, which I think is what we want, right? Because I don't know that I necessarily feel like I want short passing to be worse, but maybe, I don't know, it is quite strong, isn't it? Like, you know, doing fast pass build up.
To be honest, the way that I've always seen it, and this is the way they should have, in my opinion, gone about it, is it should be done by stats. So, like, let's say you have hypothetically 80 short passing, 80 long passing, you would get tiki-taka as an example, right? And then everyone has that. And then let's say, for example, these bronze players who maybe have like 30, 40 passing, give them the tiki-taka playstyle, and it basically artificially brings up their stats. That would be the way that I would have wanted whole playstyles to be implemented. And then maybe like a playstyle plus gives you like an added benefit. But like, I mean, I would, as you said, I don't want tiki-taka to be slower. I mean, I like the game to be quick, snappy, but I feel like I don't think tiki-taka is as big as an issue. Maybe they might just reduce the velocity of maybe certain passes, or maybe just give it to the playstyle plus. Maybe like the regular playstyle gets the nerf, and then the playstyle plus maybe keeps more of it, which I don't mind that, to be honest. But like, I think it's the incisive pass which is the big issue, because they said they were going to make the alignment between stats this year, and you could have 99 rated passing on all your stats, and it feels like if you don't have an incisive pass, you just cannot make that through, which it should not be the case. You should be able to make that through ball, and then the incisive pass should maybe give you more curve on the pass, but it shouldn't be the other way around. So I think that is the big problem, as you were saying. So yeah, I'm like you. I don't really want them to nerf it per se, but maybe if they reduce, I think they might reduce the base playstyle, and then the playstyle plus keeps that kind of added benefit. I think for this cycle, and maybe next cycle, they might iteratively change how it actually functions. What I think, anyway.
Yeah, because I would quite like to see, I think, that playstyles work in sort of a way that's different to stats, because I think there are too many playstyles that just basically like act as a stat increase, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like tiki-taka is basically just boosting short passing, which is already a stat. You know, anticipate is just boosting stand tackle, which is already a stat. Intercept is exactly the same. So I would much rather have seen playstyles sort of adding a bit of variation, different animations, things like that. I guess like 𝗪𝗏 would be an example, actually. It allows you to do something which other players can't do. You can argue that if that's too effective, it then becomes, you know, like a must-have, and that's a concern. But obviously, if things are tuned right, it shouldn't quite be like that. So with like incisive, maybe it'd be nice if, similar to what you're saying, maybe it adds a bit of extra curve, maybe it makes it easier for that, but you know, that like kind of threaded through ball, or the one that kind of like sort of delivers it a bit further ahead, like maybe goes round a player or something like that. Maybe that's the way that it would kind of work, that's different to just being a buff to stats. Although there isn't a through ball stat, obviously, right? Like there's short passing and long passing,
and
so maybe
curve and vision.
I mean, vision, yeah.
To be honest, I mean, like, I think the way that I would look at it, I think what you said is probably the right idea. I think like maybe if, like, let's say you did precision pass or precision through ball, and let's say, or you put your passing on semi, let's say you could have through ball on semi in theory, and you get rewarded. And if you have the play style, you get the extra benefit, but the risk is, it's like precision shooting. You take the risk of, okay, I make a pass. If I mess it up, that's on me, but I could also get past. I think that would be a skill gap. So if there was like some way where they can manually tune it, so like, okay, if that for someone like a manual pass in that situation, they actually aimed it at the right amount of power and they set up the right pass, then you get rewarded for it. That could be also another alternative. Whether they would do that, that's a different story. But I think you're right. It's getting the balance, like adding animations on, is a bit problematic, I think, because, you know, there's going to be like a must. But like incisive pass, it's almost like they should just give it to every single player, almost. In some way, and then like maybe just think of like a new way of going forward. But I think, yeah, as you said, like I'm expecting a decrease in velocity in tiki-taka passes, and then I'm thinking maybe the accuracy of the incisive pass is what I'm thinking. Who knows? I mean, like They said, look, inventive. So power shots and chip shots. I mean, chip
Yeah,
shots have
I
been.
was going to say, let's get into that because inventive, I'm assuming, and power shots and chip shots, that's probably going to be some kind of buff or increase in effectiveness because they're not particularly popular playstyles. Inventive actually does have its uses though, doesn't it? Like you can use it to, swerve passes, that kind of thing, and flare, short passing, back heels and stuff like that, I suppose. But I can see that being kind of buffed, and certainly power shots and chip shots are pretty. Well, power shots are not really used. I think chip shots. Let's start with that one. I guess maybe the issue there is that regular chip shots without the playstyle are pretty solid anyway, and you can kind of use other shooting types if you don't want to use the chip shot.
I think the problem, chip shots historically, they were never that good. I mean, the last time I really used chips was FIFA 21. Do you remember the 22 when you used to run down the byline and you can kind of the near post angle, you can chip it over the goalkeeper far post. I think it was 22 or 23. But apart from that, I think they made some changes to chips and then it wasn't really that effective. But this year, chip shots are a bit more effective than last year. Last year, I think they were horrendous.
Yeah, I use them quite a bit, to be fair. I just don't know that I necessarily get a big benefit out of playstyle. There's a few players I have who have it, but I just don't think it's making that much difference.
That's the thing. But I think what they should do with the chip shot playstyle, if a goalkeeper rushes out, we know that's a big way of scoring. Goalkeepers close down the angle. But the lack of goalkeeper movement, I think, if they made it so chip shots, so if a goalkeeper rushes out and they rush out too far, because you just hold down triangle inside the box, right? And a goalkeeper can get it every single time. But if they did it where you have a counter against someone rushing out, I think that would be brilliant. So I think I'm happy with the chip shot buff. I mean, as long as there's no crazy angles that are a bit. But I think if a goalkeeper rushes out, the problem is with the chip shot, it's kind of weird how the power works because there's like a fine margin where you have to aim, either get it on the spot or it goes a bit too high. But like if they can have like a chip shot play style where you just maybe tap it, but if the goalkeeper comes out, but it's enough to get the dink, enough power to get the dink over the goalkeeper, I think that's where the buff would be good. So I think with chip shots, I think that would be a viable buff. What about you? What do you think? That's what I think anyway.
This is an interesting point because I feel like in the real game, chip shots are quite rare, right? Like as in the kind of chip shot you see in FC, right? Where the keeper's quite far out and it's a full like high lob over the keeper.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen that much. I'm thinking like Ramirez do you remember the Champions League goal?
Yeah.
That kind of thing. That doesn't happen that much, but actually that technique of doing the little chip is something you see quite often, but it's more just to like dink it over the keeper, like when they're close to the keeper and the keeper's like slightly committed. So maybe that's like an animation that they need to add for shooting which uses chip shot, where it's sort of like that you can like dink it over the keeper's leg as they dive or something like that. Like that's where I could imagine it actually getting more use because I think, there just aren't that many situations where you'd be using it, right?
But I'll tell you something, right? Let's look back at 2011 when Messi scored. How many chip shot goals did he score? It wasn't that Messi stopped chipping the ball, just that goalkeepers changed their stance. Goalkeepers used to come out, close angle towards Messi. He used to wait for it. He used to do a fake shot, a feint, and then he used to dip it over. Like as an Arsenal fan, he did to 𝘱𝑒zny so many times. He used to always do it in 2011. How many times do you see Messi dinking the ball like the last 4 or 5 years? Can't even remember the last time he scored. So this is the thing.
The MLS keepers aren't really bothering. So it's
not the MLS, but let's say even after in Barcelona, like the 3 or 4 years after that, there was much less dink goals. So there's more goalkeepers change their stance and they wouldn't come out as much. So if a goalkeeper rushes out in FC 26 and you made that mistake, you should be able to chip them as Messi did in 2011 and penalize them. So that's the way that I see it. So I think if it's me, I think that buff to chip should be good. And I think if someone does rush out, I think you should have a counter against it because when they can close the gap so much, even precision shooting, sometimes you can't get the angle away. So I'm happy with that one.
Yeah, then I guess continuing with shooting, power shots. That's an interesting one because obviously power shots have been very effective at certain times since their introduction, but are just completely useless, to be honest, this cycle, I would say. What do you think they're going to do there to make it more effective? There's a small part of me, I think it would be controversial, I'm not sure they'll do it, but would be that they might even, I just don't think they would, but one thing they could do is reduce the power of regular shots to make it so that power shots are more effective as a choice, because increasing the power of power shots, maybe that would work, but like it feels like people don't need power shots to score goals, especially when the finesse plus and all those things are so much more effective. Plus, actually, regular shots, especially with precision shooting, are so good anyway. I think that power shots just don't have their place. Maybe they're going to, I think one thing I was thinking, maybe they'll make them better from distance or something. And that would be an option. But I don't know, it's easy. It's relatively easy to block them as part of the issue. So I'm struggling to see what they would do there. Maybe, increase or reduce the time it takes to take the shot, I guess, maybe.
I think that's the one. I think
that's one, yeah.
Because I think I agree. I mean, finesse shots are still going to be more efficient than power shots, I would say, if you're asking me. But I think the problem is the wind up. I think you need the play style plus. I want to be realistic to use it. I think what they might do is just reduce the wind up for the base play style. That's what I can imagine. Or maybe just general power shots, the wind up is just reduced. So I think the problem is when you get a situation, the box is so tight. When you get that ball, if you haven't got the play style plus, it just takes too long to wind up. And I feel like you can just lose the ball so easily with 𝘵𝘀𝘀𝘀 or anyone with basic defending. But I feel like, look, I don't really want to go back into first time power shot territory. That's why I wouldn't say increased power might not be the solution. But I think just narrow maybe reduce 1 or 2 frames for the playstyle, or maybe leave the playstyle plus, maybe like 1 frame. But I think with the base version, maybe reduce 2 frames, and then maybe like with a regular one, even just reduce a frame there, just to make it easier. So when you wind up that shot, you're like, okay, you know what? It's worth me winding up, taking a shot, as opposed to just doing a normal shot. I mean, well, I don't want to see them reduce normal shot power. That's one thing I would say controversial, but I think the wind up time, I think, would be the one would be the change. I'll be very surprised and shocked if they like increase the power of it, because I think then that's when you're going down into like first time. I mean, unless they balance it correctly, but like with EA, who knows? They say one thing and then it ends up becoming 3 other things that get affected. So
also,
I think
I would say like precision shooting plus regular shots with high shot power are really powerful anyway.
Anyway, yeah.
So you'd be getting into like, I don't know, 𝘵𝘂 Street game breaker territory if you did that. I was actually going to ask you, like, something that's kind of notable here is that we are not seeing a change to finesse shots, and as in the finesse shot playstyle. And I think that's something, I mean, we actually spoke about it on the podcast last week with Coach 𝘵𝘀𝘀𝘀 talking about, he was saying, do we not think that finesse needs nerfing? Obviously, they hadn't even said which ones would potentially, get a nerf at that point. So he was just suggesting it. And we were talking about it because obviously EA patched that bug they caused where finesse shots had low power. And I wonder whether they would have liked to have done that. But they were like, actually, it's going to look a bit suspicious if we're looking to make finesse changes. And, we had this whole issue with finesse, almost like it makes people think that they were like shadow patching. Do you think that could be true? Do you think they would like to nerf finesse? And do you think it should be nerfed, I guess?
From a business standpoint, I mean, it sounds legit, to be honest, what you're saying. Public perception at the end of the day. I mean, look, I think, finesse shots. The thing is, look, I think if defensive AI is overpowered, which in my opinion it is, people disagree, but I think it is. I think most people will say it is. You need some sort of counter. But the problem is finesse shots are maybe just a bit too easy. And I feel like the mistake is when they nerfed goalkeeper movement. They should have just kept the goalkeeper movement. So like, let's say someone's taking a finesse outside the box. At least allow us move the goalkeeper when the ball is further away from outside the box, and allow us move the goalkeeper. So then we have at least a counter for it. But the thing is, there's no counter for a finesse shot. Once the angle is there, you can't stop it. If they're on precision as well, it's going in. So I think, look, maybe they could have adjusted finesse shots, but I feel like there's a whole thing with goalkeeper movement. I think they went about it the wrong way. I think I understand inside the box why it's done, but I feel like as the ball goes further away, they could have increased the amount you move the goalkeeper relative to where the ball is. So against a long shot, you have some sort of counter. But I'll be honest, like, I think maybe you're right. Maybe they still want to touch it. Maybe after everything they've done, they indirectly, and this happens, they try. It's not, people always think it's like a light switch. Like you just turn one thing on and off, but it's more like volume knob, but everything's connected. You know, you turn one thing up and then the bass gets effective, the treble. So you have to be. I'm sure they didn't mean to do it, but maybe they just can't make the change. Maybe they just can't find the balance. I think that would be the thing. So I think unless they make the adjustments to goalkeeper movement and AI defending, I feel like they're probably going to leave it the way it is. It's interesting because they removed finesse, the time shooting as well, which in theory now finesses are, well, I would say theoretically easier. With time shooting, at least you had that extra step of, okay, I didn't now to time it. So I mean, it's an interesting one. I don't know. It's a debatable one, I suppose you can say.
I would say I was thinking about this because we talked about it last week, and I didn't bring this up, and I'd be interested to know what those watching or listening think about this. If you're catching this on YouTube, maybe let me know what you think in the comments. But I feel like finesse is just too dominant as a way to score relative to what is realistic in football. Like, you don't see players taking the kinds of finesse shots you see in the game that often, and they are a bit of a crutch in a way, as you say, to break down people who are set. And I think that's like needed because the game is a bit too skewed towards people who sit deep, and so finesse shots are a good way of bypassing that. But like, I think it means that people basically play the game to get finesse shot opportunities, and it makes the game feel a bit one note at times, I think. And I feel like if we saw more variety in shooting, and we do see a bit more because low driven, to be fair, I guess it's not as bad as it has been. And low drivens are a pretty realistic shot type. But yeah, I feel like they should be things that are a bit more unique, like rare in the game than they currently are. But it probably, is a needed thing at the moment because it's a way to break down set defenses. So I don't know. It's a tricky one. It feels like it could do with a little bit of tweaking, maybe a bit of a drop down in terms of its effectiveness. And I think when I say a drop down in terms of its effectiveness, I do think that drop down in effectiveness should be the play style plus, and the play style probably not necessarily just finesse shots as a whole. So, make the stats more important so that players without the finesse play style, and maybe skew it so that the regular finesse is a bit better than the not better than the plus, but a bit better than it currently is as well. I think that would kind of make a difference. But yeah, it's a complicated one. I'd be interested to know what people think about that. But obviously they're not going to do that because they haven't said they'll do that. So maybe it will come in the future. Just a quick question, actually. Well, maybe we'll take a break and I'll leave it for the listeners to think about while we take that break. I'm going to ask you after the break, do you think it's right that they do playstyle changes during the cycle, considering people have evolved players, paid money for evos that may be less good as a result of the patches? We'll come to that right after the break. Hello, and in this break, a quick reminder that the pod is made possible by supporters. The pod didn't used to be weekly. Yes, Foot Weekly wasn't actually weekly for a time. And then someone suggested setting up the Patreon. And since then, the pod has been weekly. And in fact, it's been twice weekly because there is that supporter episode every single week. So if you'd like to catch that episode and keep the podcast going, it's just £3 a month to do so. And you get loads in return. And there are perks higher than that, including access to the Discord too. So if you're interested and would like to support the podcast, then head over and search Support for Weekly. Go to Patreon and it's very easy to sign up. If you are a supporter keeping the podcast going, then a huge thank you for doing so. And if you do consider supporting, a huge thank you too. Right, let's jump back into the pod. Hello, welcome back after the break. Right, a bit of a cliffhanger to leave it on. Neil, what do you think about that? Do you think that it's okay to make these kind of changes during the cycle, or do they need to kind of not make too big changes in playstyles just because people might have built around them?
If I was a professional player, I wouldn't be happy. Like, I just think the way they do these major changes before a tournament, I think it's ridiculous if you're asking me from that stuff. Should they change it? You know what? I think if they do, I feel like they should, because I've got evos that I've done from day one, and like these evos I've set up from day one. I've spent money, FP points on them. So I feel like it's a bit of a like an injust because you've done something. Let's say they nerf incisive, unless they make everyone have incisive. For example, in theory, that would be like as an example. Then it's fine. But I feel like if they removed something that the card could do before, I feel like it's wasted. Like, what if they reduce the velocity of a 𝗖𝗏𝗏 playstyle plus, and I've only done that card? And my evolutions, I evolve them very incrementally. I wait till the last minute. So I'm actually going all out to do an Evo. It takes 2-3 months. And then, so I don't think they should do it. But I think if they are going to do it, at least have like a whole collective. So like, let's say like incisive pass, make everyone have like their incisive pass playstyle, for example. That way I don't feel like I've lost too much. That's the way that I probably will look at it. But I don't think they should do it. I think I understand why they can do it. They have to tune it, but I don't know. Or maybe they just allow, maybe every single player that has that playstyle gets an extra playstyle slot. Could be a solution. Maybe also, not that they overdo that, but at least then that way I can be like, okay, you know what? Because my center mid has 10 playstyles. I'm looking at it right now. If they nerf for incisive, I'm just like, okay, now I wasted a playstyle. Like I could use that on longboard or whatever as an example.
I think that it's if they did a big like nerf, and there's an important thing to say here, which is when they say they're going to reduce the effectiveness of tiki-taka, I think the way they'll do this is that a player with tiki-taka plus is still going to be able to pass the ball as effectively as they were able to before, and that's important to note. But players who don't have the plus or don't have the playstyle at all are going to be closer to that player in terms of effectiveness. So it shouldn't be a drop off, but it is a relative drop off compared to other players, and you might have preferred a finesse plus on your midfielder instead, for example. So I think that's where people might be frustrated, and I kind of feel like you kind of have to roll with the punches a bit on this. Like, we need to make sure gameplay is balanced, and I don't think we should be catering to the fact people might have tried to really meta-ize their evolutions, because people will obviously try and do that, but like I think we have to prioritize balanced gameplay over that. But I also think if EA nerfed playstyles slightly, just a bit, or kind of made changes to playstyles just a bit more frequently, then this would be less of an issue, right? Like then it would just be like, oh, this is happening. It's just something that happens. Sometimes this player that I have is going to be more effective. I build a selection of Evos with different playstyles and all that, and it makes the game actually more interesting. Whereas if they just like leave it for months and then suddenly they're going to change a playstyle, I think that's where it feels a bit bad. So I think that would be my preferred approach, but we'll see whether they are willing to take that approach. Obviously, if playstyles were just less effective overall, which is maybe something we'll see in 27, although they said that for 26, it hasn't really happened. Again, that would maybe make it less of an issue. But I do agree it's like frustrating for people. I just think there are better solutions for EA.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's EA can do what they want at the end of the day, right? They call the shots, but I feel like, yeah, I mean, maybe look, I think if they did, I think as long as there's slight adjustment, I think as long as they don't go OTT, then I feel like people are gonna. I said like with incisive as that a bit of an isolated example, but like someone like that would be fine. But maybe if they like, let's say hypothetically they decided, oh, I want to nerf Bruiser one day, and then they made it so like you can't push people off the ball the same way. That maybe might be a bit too extreme. So I think it really just depends. I think maybe they're just testing the waters. They know the game's coming to the end of the cycle. Let's just see how the community reacts. Put it out there. Who knows? It could just be a grand test for next year.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting, and the debate continues. Obviously, any thoughts, send them in. We'll probably discuss it more at some point, especially once we find out more about what they're planning to do, because they said they'll release a pitch note at some point. It'll be interesting to see how long that takes. Right, let's move on. As I always say, we hardly ever move on from playstyles, and we won't be again, because we're going to move on to our playstyle power rankings. We're actually going to rank, I think, the position that we haven't, or the last position we haven't ranked yet, which is defensive midfield. I think Josh mentioned in the last podcast, it might have been the supporter episode though, that in the supporter Discord for Golden Icon supporters, he's created a channel which has all the playstyle rankings that guests and the hosts have come up with, and so you can quickly see those. If you're building an Evo or something, you can take inspiration from that to help you out. So check that out if you're a Gold.icon supporter, and obviously if you fancy becoming one, you can do as well over on Patreon. Let's talk about our playstyle rankings then for defensive midfield. And it's interesting because I think defensive midfield hasn't been hugely popular for quite a lot of the cycle for a lot of players because, people were playing CMs mainly. But I think it's come back a little bit. We had Taz on the other week and he was using a 4-1-4-1. So I think there's a little bit more variation coming in. And so it's probably worth us covering it, of course. We want to complete all the positions. This sort of player build, I guess, is a more defensively minded player. We're talking like holding or maybe deep line playmaker, defend type player. So I have a bit of attacking input, but mainly it's about the defensive play. Do you want to start us off, Neil, and take us through your ranking? So the way we do this is at the moment we've got 2 playstyle pluses and then 8 regular playstyles, and try and do them in kind of roughly order from top to bottom.
Okay, so normally, as I said, if it's an attacking centre mid or a box crasher, I would do like a finesse shot and a low driven. But because this is purely a holding CDM, should I say, sitting back is where I look at it. And so I'll go with the playstyle pluses. I have 2. There's a lot I would choose from, but if I'm looking for a pure CDM, for me, it's as it stands, Intercept Playstyle Plus and the Jockey Playstyle Plus. Jockey Playstyle Plus, in my opinion, is the best defensive playstyle overall for the average. Like, let's say I've never seen your gameplay. Neil, what do I do? Statistically speaking, I'll give you Jockey and I can say you'll probably improve. And Intercept is a bit different. I'd probably say that's the better one, but you have to be in the right position still to make interception. And I feel like the Intercept playstyle is a big thing. I would veer between tiki-taka, maybe, instead of Intercept, but I would say Jockey and Intercept would be my 2 playstyle pluses.
Nice. Well, I'll give you mine and then we'll get into the other ones. So Intercept Plus, we can both agree on that, is huge. And I think that's kind of common knowledge. And then I actually agree. I mean, people will think I've got you on to back up my point about Jockey. I'm always going on about how good Jockey is. So I would be tempted by Jockey. I'd also be tempted by Pinged. And I'd be especially tempted by Pinged if the nerf comes in for tiki-taka and is, a more significant nerf. But I would go at the moment for my second playstyle as playstyle plus, I should say, as tiki-taka. So that's Intercept Plus and tiki-taka. And then I guess we can move into the regular playstyles. So we've got 8 of those. Do you want to let's do your first 4 and then I'll do my first 4 and then we'll move on.
So my top 4, so Jockey, Intercept, playstyle pluses. Then I would probably say third, I would probably say Tiki, just because of the way that I maneuver the ball. Then I would say it's a bit of a tricky one. I would probably say Pinged. Just the way that I use my CDM, I like to distribute the ball out. Then I would probably say it kind of gets a bit debatable here. I mean, you could go with Incisive. I also like Block because when I'm defending, sometimes CDM merchant, I'm bringing my CDM all the way back sometimes. And that player is like, if I see a finesse shot coming, that CDM is going to be there. So that block would be important for me to at least try to block the shot. Then I would say Quick Step. Quick Step is an important one, and Bruiser. That depends if you use advanced defending, but still I would go with Bruiser. And then I would probably say it kind of comes a bit contradictory. I don't use Anticipate because maybe Anticipate is a better option here, but I would rather have Aerial Fortress if it's someone that's tall. If they're not tall, I don't care about it. Then I would maybe even consider Aerial Fortress and then Relentless for the teammate contain. So that is maybe the way that I would do it. So like Jockey, Intercept are basically the must-haves, is regardless. Then the passing playstyle, so the Incisive, Pinged, and Tiki. Then I would go with Block, Aerial Fortress, Quick Step, Bruiser, and then Relentless. And then if I have one more, I wouldn't mind First Touch, or I wouldn't mind Press Proven. But it also just depends on how you use that CDM. I mean, like it really just depends. Like long ball for me, I just don't do long balls. Otherwise, if I did, it would 100% be there. But I don't really. I keep the ball on the ground. I don't like crossing the ball. Keep the ball on the ground. So that's probably what I would say mine. So that would be my 10.
Nice. No, that makes sense. So mine would be, obviously went for Intercept Plus, Tiki-Taka Plus, and then I would go Pinged. I mean, I think it's, up there with Tiki-Taka to some extent. It could be the plus. And then I'd say Bruiser and Jockey, both really good. I'd probably have them kind of similarly ranked, to be honest. As I said before, I think Jockey's really, really good. And then I'd probably be going Incisive for sure. Then you've got a few options on this kind of next tier of playstyle. So you've got Anticipate, I would say, just to make sure you're getting the tackles in. Long ball, because I don't use loads of long balls, I guess, but I do like to. I just think that it is quite different when you play a long ball playstyle pass versus a regular, and getting it out to the wings, for example, it can be quite good. And then quick step, I think, is quite useful, especially if the player's a bit slower, and kind of compensate for that. And then similarly, press proven is my final one, and I think that's just a good playstyle if your player is maybe not super great in terms of the dribbling, ball control. It can kind of compensate for that. If they're a bigger player as well, it helps them feel smooth on the ball, which is good for playing out. But I would also say putting Relentless in there, I think, as you said, is a good way to go as well.
Very underrated, it's very underrated.
And especially if you've got a player with lower stamina, you don't really want to ideally sub your defensive midfielder, right? So I think it's nice to have. And then Inventives are all right, actually, I guess, as a sort of bonus option. Like maybe you play some outside the foot passes. Who doesn't like a little back heel in the defensive midfield area sometimes? I think that would be it. So hopefully that helps. And as I said, you can see all the choices within the Golden Icon supported Discord area, and I think Josh will probably add his own into that. I know he's not on the episode today, but I'm sure he will. So look out for that. Right, that's our playstyle ranking done. We'll have to see which one of those, ones of those get nerfed, I guess, within the next few weeks. But yeah, we're going to be moving around onto strikers for next week, I guess, which we actually did at the very start, but it was a while ago. So we had maybe a shift in meta, maybe also actually the fact that they're in how 2 playstyle pluses rather than just 1. So it'd be interesting to do that on the next episode, which will be a sports episode. Let's maybe take a break, actually, and we will come back to talk more about gameplay tips specifically, and about tactics, because Neil has an interesting tactic out at the moment. So we'll do that just after this break. Hello, welcome back after the break. Right, let's get into this tactic then. Not a tactic I've seen used very often, and has a little bit of a ratty reputation, but I mean, this cycle it's not very meta. But maybe it is, but people just don't know about it, right? And it is the 5-2-1-2 that you've been playing, Neil. People can obviously find the full guide on YouTube if they want to check that out. But yeah, why don't you take us through kind of like the thinking behind it, and then also like some of the key roles and player choices.
We're talking about being ratty. I mean, if the numbers are rearranged as like a 3-5-2, people won't.
Exactly. Yeah.
It doesn't make sense anyway. Well, like so, does Guardiola play like a 3-5, like a 3-5-2, or is he playing a 5? So changing those positions is mainly the way that it defends, because it defends in a back 5. People will think it's ratty, which I understand. But the idea was I wanted just a fun formation. I wanted to play a 4-1-2-1-2. But I felt like I wanted to play a 3-5-2 really, but you can't play that formation because they just completely ruined it. Like you cannot play a back 3. Maybe as me as an elite player, if I play in Division 1 or 2, it's fine. But let's say if you're watching this, maybe you're like in a Division 1 and you play in Division 3, it's fine. But when you play someone on the same level as you, you're going to get destroyed. So it's only if you're much better than your opponent. So I wanted to create one that I could just play fun, play against anyone. The idea behind this is basically is a 5-2-1-2, 2 centre mids, 1 cam, and 2 strikers. For the left back and right back, I call it the flying fullbacks. They fly forward and they provide support on the wing areas. So you have the wider players that come forward. So the whole idea with this formation is you want left backs and right backs. They're going to be playing as like attacking wing backs. The code that's going to be given to you is for support.
It'll be in the description, yeah.
It will be in the description in the podcast, but it's for support. But I would recommend attacking because they end up going back and forward. They're a bit more aggressive on the attack. The most important thing is try to find a roll plus plus. So a roll plus plus is important because when you lose possession, the roll plus plus alongside a few things like stats, like defensive awareness, attack positioning, will dictate how quickly they come back. So try to get at least a roll plus. It's not the end of the world. Now, one thing you can do, I would say with this is try to find someone who's got pace and stamina. Someone that could pass. If you've done any Evos before, that's perfect. The thing I would say is the 2 outer centre backs, make sure they've got minimum 85 sprint speed. So don't put anyone that's got like 76 sprint speed, because when your fullbacks are going forward, you've got a back three. You need pace. If someone has a through ball in behind, we know how important through balls are this year. You need a counter for it. So the 2 outer left centre back and right centre backs, they need to have pace. That's the only
Would you
thing.
say they're almost like fullback defend players in a way? Because like
they are, but I mean, for me, at this stage, 88 sprint speed without the 𝘭𝑪ℎ𝗍𝑔 style is what I use for my centre backs. Like that's minimum. That's like a normal centre back.
Yeah. 100%.
I've got like Van der Ven and Kusanov Evos here. They're just completely stacked. They got like 90 sprint speed. I think Van der Ven has 96. Kusanov has like 93. They got quick step as well and everything. So I think this is a really good format. It's really fun. Look, I'll be honest, give it a try. Just don't knock it. Give it like 5-6 games. You'll really like it. One thing you can do though, let's say you got a 4-4-1-1. Go into a 5-back, but then an additional tip is put the left back on stay back defend, but then put the right back, put like a winger there. So let's say you haven't got like an additional 4-back, so you can put a winger there out of position. Now, normally I would say don't do that, but this year they've buffed out of position players. So before they should just stand there and do nothing like a statue. They never played football before in their entire life. But now this year they still have that movement. So what you could do is you could actually kind of make the forward stay back and have one of the right back or the left back go forward. And that way you kind of have an attack on one side. So you remember, like anyone remembers my 3-5-2, the one side attack from last year, which you can't do anymore, unfortunately. So that could be something you could do as well. So you don't have to have all the players going forward. Maybe you can, you know what? I attack down the right-hand side. Have my right back be an attacking wing back. And then my left back could just be a fullback on defense. So you keep the back four in shape and the right back goes forward. That's another way you can also run that system as well. But one thing I want to mention, counter, so important. Counter is the most important thing because that's what makes them fly. If you use short passing, you're not going to get the same effect. Even with balance, you can use balance, but I'd probably recommend counter because the key thing is when those fullbacks go, that's when you want to make the pass. Counter makes them run forward. The roll plus makes them get in positions quicker. You want them to rapidly go forward. That's why pace there is important. So no 84 sprint speed players there. Try to get as close to 99 as possible. The faster they are, the faster they're going to be able to exploit your opponent. That's the key thing.
Yeah. And just to highlight, those roll plus is so important in the fullback. Well, as a fullback in the kind of wing back positions, right?
Yeah.
Like the player just recovers so much faster. Important in the midfield as well. I noticed you've got kind of interesting, like a lot of people will play with the same roles, like symmetrically in their team, but this is kind of in like the 4-4-1-1 tactics or 4-5-1 or whatever. But interestingly, you've got like deep line playmaker on one side, so on defender, then the box to box. And then up front, you've actually got poacher and advanced forward. Do you find like poacher, you notice a sort of significant difference in terms of the way they play versus the advanced forward?
So I like two different types of movements. Like you can use two advanced. When you copy a tactic, if you like false 9 on your striker, then use false 9. You know, it's not set in stone. So I like poacher. And I like advanced forward because I like two different types of movements. Sometimes I like to trigger a player. Sometimes I want a player that runs in behind. If I was a meta rat per se, I might use two advanced forwards to get the ball to the feet. But I feel like if you don't know like what is going on, and let's say you have no idea what advanced forward, let's say you truthfully don't even know, you just copy it. Just use one poacher, one advanced forward. And that way you have at least two different types of movement is what I would recommend. For the cam, playmaker is probably the best balance because sometimes, which I like shadow striker, but the problem is that player goes too far into the box. So sometimes you got a disconnect between the midfield and the attacking line. So that's why that. And then the center mids. Now, truthfully, I play this with two box to boxes. If I gave this tactic out on YouTube, there's going to be someone in Division 5 watching. They're going to start crying. There's no one in midfield and it's all my fault. And I've ruined their weekend league. So I put deep line playmaker defense. So at least you have one player that sits. So if you're comfortable, let's say you're watching, you know what, I can defend, then you consider two box to boxes. If you know you struggle defensively, keep it like this. And if still you're struggling, you can always put the other box to box and deep line playmaker defend as well. The thing is, what happens is people, when they go forward, they lose the ball. When you lose the ball, if you got a back three and one center mid, at least if you run out one center mid, your back three stays in shape. With two box to boxes, they've gone forward. So if you get turned over and you lost the ball, you got 3 players at the back. Most average player gets frustrated and they start running out with their centre back. Then it's completely all over. So that stopgap centre mid is there to close down the play. And if you do get countered or you need to rotate the ball, that player is there in that position. So you could always make that change if that makes sense.
Yeah. And actually interesting, I was noticing both centre backs on both wide centre backs are on defend. There is this cycle, the wide back role. Have you found that not particularly effective? Have you given it a try? Because I've seen some people trying to play 5 or 3 backs, saying that does seem good.
I did it when the 3 backs came out. To be honest, I just didn't like their movement, and I feel like for me, I don't. When I'm getting countered, I know the through ball's in behind, but I don't want to create gaps I want to push the ball on the wider area. I want to solidify the middle. And the thing is, it depends what division you're in, but realistically, on a top tier division, someone's going to do a player lock and go through that gap. And if they're defending, the centre backs are splitting up. Like someone is going to do a player lock or a simple L1 trigger, then I have to then run back in the center. I'd rather stay compact. If I need to, I can go out wide, but I don't want the game to go wide for me. It's like same with like using stop or anything aggressive with your center backs. If I want to be aggressive, I'll be aggressive myself. I don't want the game to do it for me, because if the game starts running out, let's hypothetically an aggressive center back ran out as an example, hypothetically, then I've conceded, not because of my mistake, because the game's mistake. So if I want to be aggressive, I can do it myself. I have that control. You know what I mean? Like I don't want the game to decide, when. So that's why I like to stay compact. And sometimes, for example, your fullback might not be too far away, and you just want to slow down the player. So that's what I'm trying to say. If you have them quick enough, you can just switch them and just run back. You have to be adaptive. If you're up against, for example, a 1 striker formation, this is brilliant, because by the time your opponent triggers a fullback, if you're good enough, you can just switch to your right back and run back and cover the run. But let's say if you're up against, for example, a 4-4-2, or let's say, for example, someone's playing a 4-2-1-3 and they've got shadow strike, inside forward attack, and the strike on advance forward, then it's basically a 4-on-3. So you have to be adaptable. So that's why keep them compact, keep them in a center. If I need them, I can always move them out wide.
I noticed, and we're a big fan of this on the podcast, you've got your goalkeeper on 𝘵𝗱𝗃𝗃, which I do think gives a bit of an advantage, right? Allowing you to kind of use that rush out, which is nice.
I mean, to be honest, ever since the goalkeeper movement nerf, I've just moved all my goalkeepers to 𝘵𝗃𝗃𝗃. I just feel like they're just better placed. Just trying to squeeze every percentage you can for the rush out. Yeah, I mean, I don't use ball playing. I mean, if you want to experiment and have fun, you could consider doing that, but I wouldn't. Like the 2 things I would never use are like ball playing centre back and ball playing goalkeeper. They're just like way too. The benefits are just not there. The cons are just, they outweigh the benefits too much. So normally I leave a goalkeeper on balance or 𝘵𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃.
It is interesting because I remember playing an early build of the game where the keeper literally did come out and you could basically like get them involved in the build up in defense. But they made the goalkeeper come out less far and not really get as involved. And I think it kind of made sense because you know how if you put team press on, they just don't press the keeper. I think it was too easy to hold possession if you're trying to like run the clock down. I mean, it's actually not that hard to do that anyway, but I think that was one of the issues. But it theoretically would be quite a realistic thing to be able to involve the keeper in the build-up.
I wish you could, because at the end of the day, the goalkeeper is the 11th player. So I think if they're going down like the realistic route, I mean, technically, I mean, maybe next year they should adjust it. But I think that would be cool because, like, imagine like just like how Ederson would in real life, or Raya, that player's going to come and that player is ready to make the pass. And I feel like, look, it's only if you put, let's say, ball playing defender. Let's say like a ball playing 𝘵𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃, but it's only if you turn it on. Like, you don't have to turn it on. So I think that would be actually an interesting role they could add.
Yeah. And also you can add playstyles to goalkeepers, right? Passing ones, so it could be quite nice. The other thing I was going to say is I noticed you've got the depth at 60 balanced. Is that what you're preferring at the moment? Like, how are you seeing depth? Because I feel like I've generally gone for like 70 for high, and like I've kind of switched it up a little bit. I feel like that it doesn't feel like there's a huge difference. I mean, obviously, if you go all the way to the extremes, you do see a difference, but it doesn't actually feel massively different, I think, through the different like stages of depth, if you like. But is there do you have like a strong preference, do you think?
So as a general rule of thumb, people are going to say, you see tactics videos, they say, I use 47 depth. I mean, there's no chance even a pro player knows difference. Like, they saw 2 gameplays and you ask them which one is 43 and which one is 54. I tell you, no one's going to know the difference. So, but the key thing is the defensive approach that changes. So when you go from balance to high, so if you go to 70 and you go to high, that's when you notice the difference. So the reason I use 60 is the highest you can realistically go without going into high territory. When you're playing a 5, it depends on how you're playing the formation. If I'm trying to press inside the game, I would use a high defensive approach, but I would prefer to use 60. The reason why I use 60 is it's the highest that you can be being unbalanced without leaving too much space in behind. Like, you know, if you play like deep, you should never play deep. But let's say, for example, in Division 10, it would make sense. People don't know how to play the game because then you have loads of players far back. But once you're in Division 7 and above, people are going to start shooting outside the box or shooting inside the box with finesse shots. So you have to basically change. So I would say, as a general rule of thumb, 60 is the best to be without being too deep, where someone can just pass the ball and do a first-time shot or score a goal. But also, you're high enough to, if someone has a finesse shot, you're there to then defend the situation, at least switch to a defender and run out and try to defend it. So I think it's the best one without, because if you use high and you don't know how to defend, it can be risky. But bear in mind, this is not a pressing formation. If I was losing, let's say 2-0, you know, who's going to press in 5-back? You're not going to press in it. That's the worst thing you want to do. So you'll change like a 4-4-2, or you'll change to something of that nature where you can press. So that's the thing. So I would say, general rule of thumb for me, depth, I normally use 60 for all my formations as the lowest I go. Maybe for a defensive formation, I might go 45, depending on how my opponent is playing. But I think for generally, balance is probably the best because you still mark the runners. You're not so deep where players got space inside the box, and you're not so high. You're not like over pressing where like the game is sometimes trying to hold the offside line, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was wanting to ask you a bit before we wrap up about like defending advice, and I think something that comes up a lot is like tracking the very kind of agile players defensively, as in, like, you know, you come up against, obviously Pina is not as good as she once was, or not as common as she once was, but you still see those types of players cropping up quite often, being very effective, and people evolving players in that mold. I've got like a 5'1" random Argentinian league striker who I put through the team of the year Evos, who's basically like Pina, but better, I would say. And so I think like that is something that people often struggle with, like that kind of mobility. And we were chatting a bit before the podcast. You had an interesting kind of solution to that people might want to try.
I think there's a lot of in my opinion, in the community, a lot of miscommunication. I think like people, when they say lengthy is the meta, everyone just flocks like sheep, and they just, without even logic, they just believe it. And I understand it is the meta, but it depends on how you use your players. If you're watching this and you're a wannabe pro player and you're triggering your right back going forward, or your right mid in a 4-5-1, then lengthy for that right mid will be the best thing possible. But one thing I would tell you for defenses, everyone is trying to use lengthy. Now, when I used to use quick step for my centre backs, I think now it's becoming more of a norm. Now everyone's using quick step, but I've always used it to get that short acceleration burst. So technically lengthy and quick step can kind of technically the best of both worlds, but actually for the average player, you want to use explosive, because the time, when does lengthy kick in? It's like you have to run 2/3 of the pitch. It's the actual diagram, but by the time you get the lengthy bonus as a defender, the through ball's already been happened, or you're not in a position to recover. In fact, you'd ideally want to be explosive or controlled. So actually, technically speaking, if you look at the balance of play, let's say you took the average player, even like in Division 1, a top player, right? Statistically speaking, they're going to be facing more situations where they have to switch to defender and maybe in the box have to cut the angle towards goal. That's where explosive is going to help you the most. That's where quick step is supposed to give you the biggest benefit. So actually speaking, if you're trying to get a centre back on lengthy, unless you are specifically using that centre back and you know you're getting counter attacked and you're running back that entire distance, then lengthy might not even be this. It might be actually not even making you play worse, because if you're not switching on time and you're not running back, or let's say, for example, you're not defending the right way, you need to recover as quick as possible. So actually speaking, lengthy might be worse for the average player in centre back. From the attacking standpoint, it's different. Like if you're trying to find a right mid, and yes, if you trigger a 4-5-1, you trigger that right mid going forward, and you're playing that through ball, then that's when lengthy will help you because you get the speed boost at the end to beat the defender. But think from the defensive standpoint, you're already at a deep position. You're just running back at that point. You're not running the whole length of the pitch. You're just literally running the last third effectively. So something just to bear in mind. So I think when you are choosing a player, don't just choose lengthy because everyone else is doing. Actually think, okay, how am I using lengthy? Is lengthy actually better for me? Like I'll tell you for CDMs, unless your CDM is running into the box, probably better off using explosive because what do? You're mostly switching between your CDMs, trying to cover the gap as quick as possible. Lengthy won't help you in those situations. So that's why I think if you took it statistically, overall, I would say, in my opinion, explosive is the better option for centre backs.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting point because I think like it depends. I mean, you should take a look at your gameplay and see how often it is that you are like doing a longer distance run with your defenders. And if you're actually not doing it that frequently, then you're better off, as you say, having explosive. I think for me, my fullbacks I often end up doing the long runs. So, it makes sense for them to be lengthy. Also, with people having more and more lengthy wingers, you maybe need it to keep up when they're going into that space and you're trying to cut the angle. But actually, yeah, it is an interesting point with centre backs. It depends on the context of the game. But yeah, sometimes I'm not actually doing that much backtracking, longer runs to keep up with players. And yeah, maybe explosive would help with that. It's quite interesting. Maybe I'll work on an explosive centre back and then have one of each just to give me that kind of option of like someone who can be a bit more agile and kind of defend the space over shorter distances, because I think it is an interesting point. And actually, yeah, I think explosive plus quick step can also be really nice for compensating for the fact that over a longer distance they're not quite so effective. And actually I was going to say quick step's been like super common this cycle in evolutions, so I think it's really worth like taking a look and making sure you get quick step onto your defensive players, because it is just pace is so important. It's a really nice boost that you get from quick step, and it kind of bypasses the fact that obviously pace is often capped, and you can't get like centre backs beyond a certain pace sometimes. So I'd look out for that. Right, is there anything else, Neil, you maybe mentioned at the end here? I think we were going to talk a bit about advanced defending versus tactical defending. We probably don't have time to go into it in depth, but bruiser has become increasingly meta. Seal outs have become more important. So, sort of shoulder barging a player off the ball. We talked about it on podcast before. I guess like the thing that maybe would be interesting for you to comment on is what kind of level of player would you be suggesting actually you should switch into using advanced defending, where you make that choice between going in for the seal out or tackling, which makes the seal outs often better because you can choose to seal out, right? What kind of level would it be worth switching to that? Because it is a more advanced skill. Or I guess it depends how confident you are. When I say these things, I'm often like, well, it just depends on the player, doesn't it? Or the person playing, right?
If you're a pro, like most pros are now using advanced defending. Some pros still use tactical defending, but if you're watching this and you're like wannabe pro player, you should be using advanced defending because the benefits are there and you know how to defend at that point. The problem where it comes down to is people say, look, I'm in Division 6 and I use advanced defending and it works for me because I can use bruiser. But I would probably make the argument you're in Division 6. If you were good at defending, you wouldn't be in Division 6 because you can get to the elite division with a very average attack and a good defense because the average person can't defend. So although in these isolated moments it works out, you need to know how to defend first. So I would say, look, you don't have to. If you're a pro, you should use it. If you're like in the elite division, Division 1, I think it's worth giving it a go. But I don't think if you're like below Division 1, you should even, in my opinion, like I don't think there's a stress to overuse it. Yes, I know there's the real benefit there, but if you look at statistically the average defense situation you'd be in, if you know how to defend in the first place, you wouldn't even need the brute. Because people, what they're doing is they're seeing a 1v1, they're trying to barge the player as opposed to trying to run back and defend the angle in the first place. So it also affects the way you defend because you think, oh, I can just use bruiser and get away with this. And it changes the way that you run back because then you think, I'm not going to run back to where the ball's going to be. I'm now going to run back to go where the player is going to be. So that's why I would say, I think indirectly, from all the gameplay that I've looked, thousands of people that I've coached, I think honestly, keep it on tactical. And then if you're at that level and you're comfortable defending, then I would say switch to advanced defending. That's what I would say. It's a bit of a tricky one. I said player to player. There's probably going to be someone watching this right now. It's like, you know what, Neil, you're wrong. I'm in Division 6. I know how to defend. Then you're probably quite right. But I would say for generally, I don't think you have to stress. Don't stress that, oh, I need to use advanced defending. I still use tactical defending for the sole reason that I teach it that way. But I'll be honest, I know how to use advanced. Is there a benefit for me? Yes, there is, because I know how to use it. But I still think tactical defending is so good. And there's still some pros using tactical defending right now. So if they're still using it, you can still use it as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. One thing I would say is I've been kind of learning to use it. I've got to a decent level now where I definitely feel like I'm getting an advantage from it. I think if you're someone who wants to be aggressive and press and get in the opponent's face, I think it helps quite a lot in those situations, because you are just much less likely to give away a foul when you're getting like trying to win the ball off someone. And I think that makes quite a sizable difference in terms of how aggressive you can be. And be safe in your aggression in areas where like otherwise you really wouldn't want to give away a foul or you could get a card or something like that. So yeah, I think like maybe that's worth thinking about if you're that type of player. Maybe it's sort of worth it, even if you're not super amazing at the game or feel like you haven't mastered too many mechanics. It's not a bad one to learn, but I agree. I think like it's not high on the list. There's a lot of things to learn before that, as you say.
One thing to say though, just quickly before the thing with that one is Bruiser is definitely there though, but it's a really big advantage once you know how to use it. Like you can literally knock someone off the ball, not give away a foul. But again, you need to know, as Ben said, when to use it. That's the most important thing. So if you are aggressive, I think it's worth, but just knowing when is the key thing.
Yeah, and a reminder to be spamming the button, not just press and hold, because it's like completely pointless if you're just going to hold it. Nice. Well, Neil, I think we're ready to wrap up. Thank you very much for joining us and giving all your insight. Where can people find your like YouTube and your coaching as well, actually?
So YouTube, NealGuides, NealGuides.com for my coaching and my FC school if you want for more information, or my Patreon is there, or LearnFC.com. Actually, I bought that domain the other day, LearnFC.com for more information regarding that. And thank you again for having me on. Really enjoyed doing this podcast.
Great to have you. And yeah, a reminder that if you want to catch next week's gameplay episode, it's going to be a supporter episode. This week's content episode was a supporter episode, so you can go check that out if you're a supporter, obviously, but also if you're not, you can sign up and get an extra podcast every single week. And you can do that just by searching support for weekly. Head over to Patreon, really easy and quick to sign up. You can sign up to Neil's as well while you're there. And yeah, thank you very much. Of course, as we always say to all you supporters out there, supporting the podcast and keeping it going is hugely, hugely appreciated. And a big thank you to those icon patrons.
Dave B, Darren W, Hugh J, Rob W, Josh R, Ralph, Brian, Michael B, Adam R, Make B, Michael H, Rob S, Michael K, Neil P, Jake S, Tom B, Alex M, Damon H, L, James B, Sam K, The Shirt Locker, Lee A, Chris G, Mark M, Dom P, Rob P, Roger D, Waterman, Also Ran, and 𝗫𝗎𝘁. Plus a special thanks to Luke M, Dave B, Hugh J, Tom M, Darren W, and Pato Foot for advice and production assistance. Before I leave you, just one more thing to add though. Ultimate Team is a bit like life really. It has its many ups and downs. If you're having a few more downs than ups in real life in these more difficult times, then please don't feel that you're alone or need to struggle on without taking action. If you go to thecalmzone.net, there's loads of resources, advice, support, or even just a friendly chat for anyone who needs it. If it sounds like it could help you, then head over to thecalmzone.net. And for now, have a good one, and I'll catch you on the next podcast.